Hello, and welcome to today's class where we'll delve into Chapter 16, exploring the profound and often complex topic of death and dying. By the end of the session, you'll gain insights into various aspects surrounding death, dying, and the grieving process. First, we must understand how death is defined. It's not merely the cessation of biological functions, but also a social and psychological transition. So, let's take a look at the definitions. The medical definition says that death is the irreversible cessation of all vital functions, especially as indicated by permanent stoppage of the heart, respiration, and brain activity. The legal definition of death varies by jurisdiction, but often align with the medical criteria of irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions, or irreversible cessation of all functions of the entire brain, including the brainstem. The biological definition in biology, death is viewed as the end of the organism's life cycle, marked by permanent end of all vital processes at the cellular and systemic level. And finally, the philosophical definition is that death is often discussed in terms of the end of consciousness, personal identity, and existence. Human euthanasia presents a multitude of ethical dilemmas revolving around the sanctity of life, autonomy, and the potential for abuse. One central issue is the question of whether it is morally permissible to end life intentionally, even with the intention of alleviating suffering. Proponents argue that individuals have the right to choose a dignified death and should be allowed to end their lives to avoid prolonged pain and suffering. This perspective emphasizes autonomy and the belief that individuals should have control over their own bodies and decisions. On the other hand, opponents contend that euthanasia undermines the inherent value of human life and can lead to a slippery slope where lives of the vulnerable, such as the elderly or disabled, might be undervalued or pressured towards euthanasia. This raises concerns about potential abuses and the devaluation of life based on the subjective assessments of the quality of life. Furthermore, the role of healthcare professionals in euthanasia brings about the ethical conflicts regarding their duty to preserve life versus their role in alleviating suffering. Balancing these complex issues requires careful consideration of legal, medical, and ethical frameworks to ensure that the practice, if permitted, is carried out in the utmost respect for human dignity and autonomy while safeguarding against potential abuses. Feelings about death evolve over adulthood. From early fears of contemplation in later life, individuals navigate complex emotions and the existential reflections. We explore how people cope with their inevitability of their own morality, examining cultural, religious, and personal beliefs that shape these attitudes. Central to this discussion is discussing death anxiety, its manifestations, and how individuals cope with the existential dread that it can evoke. Coping with the inevitability of mortality is a deep personal and often culturally influenced process, involving a range of strategies shaped by cultural, religious, and personal beliefs. Central to this process is the concept of death anxiety, the fear and apprehension associated with the anticipation of death, which can manifest in various ways, such as existential dread, panic attacks, or avoidance behaviors. So taking a look a little bit further, the cultural influences and cultural attitudes towards death can vary widely and profoundly affect how individuals cope with morality. In many Eastern cultures, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, death is seen as a natural part of life cycle and often viewed with acceptance and even reverence. These beliefs promote the idea of reincarnation or spiritual continuation, which can provide comfort and reduce death anxiety. In contrast, in Western cultures, they may focus more on prolonging life and combating death, sometimes leading to higher levels of death anxiety and a greater emphasis on medical interventions at the end of life. When we're looking at religious beliefs plays a significant role in shaping attitudes towards death and dying. For instance, in Christianity, Christianity, the belief in an afterlife and resurrection offers many adherents a sense of hope and peace about death. Similarly, Islam teaches that death is a transition to another phase of existence, with the promise of external life in paradise for the faithful. Those religious frameworks, can provide a structured way to understand and cope with morality, offering rituals, community support, and narratives that help individuals face death with a sense of meaning and continuity. Personal beliefs and philosophies also shape views on death. Individuals develop unique ways of coping with morality based on their existence, values, and philosophies. Some may find solace in philosophical approaches such as existentialism, which encourages and involves confronting and accepting the inevitability of death as a means to live more authentic and fulfilling life. Others might turn to mindfulness practices, focusing on living in the present moment and accepting the impermanence of life. Personal coping mechanisms can include creating a legacy, engaging in meaningful activities, or finding comfort in relationships and community. Finally, death anxiety and coping mechanisms. Death anxiety, the fear of death or the dying process, can manifest in various ways, such as the obsessive thoughts about dying, avoidance of death-related topics, or a heightened fear of illness. Coping with death anxiety involves both a psychological and behavioral strategies. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can help individuals reframe their thoughts about death and develop a healthier coping mechanisms. Practices such as meditation, mindfulness, and deep breathing exercises can reduce anxiety by promoting relaxation and a sense of control. Engaging in discussions about death and dying, whether through support groups, therapy, or conversations with loved ones, can also alleviate anxiety by normalizing the topic and reducing feelings of isolation. End-of-life issues encompasses a spectrum of considerations, from medical decisions to emotional and spiritual needs. We define what constitutes as final scenario and explore the role of hospice care in providing comfort and support during this critical phase. Understanding how individuals can articulate and document their end-of-life desires ensures their wishes are respected amidst medical complexities. A final scenario refers to the last phase of an individual's life, typically characterized by the decline in health and approach of death. This period is marked by transition from curative treatments to palliative care, focusing on providing comfort and managing symptoms rather than attempting to cure the underlying illness. The recognition of the final scenario often involves acknowledging that the patient's condition is terminal and that the primary goal is to ensure a dignified and comfortable end-of-life experiences. So, the role of hospice care. Hospice care plays a crucial role in the final scenario by providing comprehensive support aimed at improving the quality of life for patients facing a terminal illness. Key aspects of hospice care include pain and symptom management. Hospice care provides the relief of pain and other distressing symptoms, ensuring that patients remain as comfortable as possible during their final days. Emotional and psychological support. Hospice teams offer counseling and emotional support to both patients and their families, helping them cope with emotional challenges of the dying process. Spiritual care. Recognizing the importance of spiritual well-being, hospice care often includes support with chaplains and spiritual counselors to address many spiritual concerns or needs. Hospice care provides resources and guidance for family members, helping them navigate the practical and emotional aspects of the dying of a loved one. Hospice care assists patients and families in making important decisions about end-of-life care, including advanced directives and living wills and do not resuscitate orders, which are called DNR orders. To ensure that the individual's end-of-life wishes are respected amidst medical complexities, it's essential to clearly articulate and document these desires. This can be achieved through various means, such as advanced directives, which are legal documents involving living wills, durable power of attorneys for healthcare to allow individuals to specify their preferences for medical treatment and appoint someone to make decisions on their behalf as they're unable to do so. A living will outlines specific instructions regarding the types of medical treatment and interventions an individual does or does not want in the event of terminal illness and incapacitation. A durable power of attorney for healthcare is a document that designates a trusted person to make healthcare decisions on behalf of the individual if they become incapable of making their own decisions. A durable power of attorney a do not resuscitate order, a DNR order, indicates that individuals do not want to undergo cardiopulmonary resuscitation if their heart stops beating or they stop breathing. Post forms, which is physician order of life-sustaining treatment. Forms translate an individual's end-of-life wishes into medical orders that must be followed by healthcare providers. And communication and education, open and ongoing communication between patients, family, and healthcare providers is vital to ensure that the end-of-life wishes are understood and respected. Regular discussions about their preferences and values, as well as education about the options and implications of different end-of-life decisions, can help facilitate these conversations. So, what do the stages of grief look like? Grief is a universal human experience, yet it manifests uniquely in each individual. So taking a look at the stages, which range from shock, denial, anger, guilt, and eventually acceptance, that accompany loss is important. Distinguishing between typical grief and prolonged grief disorder underscores the importance of support and intervention, in navigating loss. The grieving process is a complex and individual experience and typically unfolds through several stages, each marked by distinct emotions and reactions. Understanding these stages and dynamics involved can help in distinguishing between typical grief and prolonged grief disorder, as well as recognizing the importance of support and intervention. So let's take a look. Shock is the initial reaction to loss, often involving a sense of disbelief or numbness. The reality of loss may be difficult to accept, leading to a feeling of being stunned or detached from the situation. Denial is a defense mechanism which serves to protect the individual from the full impact of loss. This stage can involve avoiding thoughts or discussions about the loss, as if refusing to acknowledge it might make it less real. Anger can emerge from the individual as the individual begins to process the reality of loss. So this emotion may be directed at various targets, such as the deceased, oneself, others, or even a higher power. Anger serves as an outlet for the intense pain and the frustration experienced by grief. Bargaining in the stage of bargaining, individuals may dwell on what could have been or what should have been done differently to prevent the loss. Bargaining often involves if-only statements, reflecting a desire to reverse or mitigate the loss through hypothetical scenarios. Depression is the recognition of the loss's permanence The recognition of the loss's permanence can lead to a profound sadness and despair, which is the depression stage. This stage is characterized by feelings of emptiness, hopelessness, and withdrawal from the usual activities and relationships. Depression and grief is a natural response to loss, but it can be just as debilitating if it persists. And the final stage is acceptance. Acceptance involves coming to terms with the reality of the loss and finding a way to move forward. This does not simply imply that the pain of the loss is gone, but rather that the individual has found a way to integrate the loss into their life and begin to engage in the world again. The grieving process is not linear. Individuals can move back and forth between stages, and emotions can resurface unexpectedly. Each person's experience of grief is unique and influenced by factors such as nature of the relationship with the deceased, or personal coping mechanisms, cultural practices, and previous experiences with loss. So, what's the difference in typical grief versus prolonged grief disorder? Typical grief involves a range of intense emotions that gradually diminish over time, allowing the individual to adjust to the loss and resume daily functioning. While the pain of the loss may never completely disappear, individuals find ways to live with it. On the other hand, prolonged grief disorder, also known as complicated grief, occurs when the grieving process is unusually intense and prolonged, significantly impairing the individual's ability to function. Symptoms of prolonged grief disorder may include persistent yearning for the deceased, preoccupation with thoughts of the loss, difficulty accepting the death, and a sense of meaninglessness or emptiness. Prolonged grief disorder, or PGD, can interfere with daily life and relationships, leading to additional mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and substance use. It often requires professional intervention to help the individual process the loss and find a path toward healing. So, what's the importance of support and intervention? Support from friends, family, and community can be crucial in helping individuals navigate the grieving process. Open communication, shared memories, and practical assistance can provide comfort and reduce the feelings of isolation. For those struggling with the intense prolonged grief, professional interventions such as grief counseling, therapy, or support groups can be beneficial. These resources offer a safe space to express emotions, learn coping strategies, and receive guidance in adjusting to life after loss. Finally, we'll explore how different age groups comprehend and cope with death. Children's understanding evolves gradually, necessitating sensitive guidance from adults. Adolescents confront death amidst their own developmental challenges, while adults face profound impacts of loss of loved ones. Special attention will be given to older adults who often confront their own mortality and cope with losses that span generations. Different age groups comprehend and cope with death in distinct ways, shaped by their developmental stages and life experiences. Each group requires tailored support and guidance to navigate complexities of grief and loss effectively. So, taking a look at children first. Understanding death with children. So, infants and toddlers do not understand death, but can sense the absence and emotional distress of caregivers. They may react to changes with changes in behavior, such as increased clinginess or disrupted sleep patterns. Preschoolers ages 3 to 5 see death as temporary or reversible, often linking it to sleep. They may ask repeated questions about the deceased and struggle to grasp the permanence of death. School-age children, age 6 to 12, begin to understand death as final and irreversible. They may personify death as a figure, like a skeleton or a ghost, and can feel a range of emotions such as sadness or anger. So what does coping strategies look like for them? So for infants and toddlers, consistent routines and comforting from caregivers help infants and the toddlers feel secure. With preschoolers, simple, honest explanations about death and reassurance about their safety can help. Creative activities like drawing or playing can provide outlets for their feelings. School-age children deserve open conversations and validation of their feelings, and involvement in the memorial rituals can aid in their understanding and coping. Adolescents' understanding of death can have more maturity to it, and they have more maturity in understanding death's permanence and universality. However, they may still struggle with the emotional aspects of death, balancing their emerging independence with the need for support. Some coping mechanisms for them are the fact that adolescents often oscillate between seeking peer support and relying on family. They might express grief through mood swings, changes in behavior, or engagements in risky activities. Encouraging open communication, providing emotional support, and respecting their needs for space are crucial. Involvement in support groups or counseling may be also beneficial. So what does it look like for adults? Adults have well-developed comprehension on death and its finality. They experience grief deeply and influenced by the nature of relationships with the deceased and their life responsibilities. Adults may cope by seeking support from friends or family or professional counseling. They may also find solace in maintaining routines, engaging in work, or pursuing hobbies. Active participation in memorial services and creating lasting legacies for the deceased, like charitable donations and projects, can provide a sense of purpose and connection. Older adults often have deep existential understanding of death, both from losing peers and facing their own mortality. Their experiences with loss span generations, intensifying the cumulative impact of grief. Older adults may reflect on their life, seeking meaning, and turn to spiritual or religious beliefs for comfort. Maintaining social connections, engaging in community activities, and preserving memories of the deceased through stories and traditions are crucial for their emotional well-being. Addressing practical concerns such as wills and estate planning may also provide a sense of control and preparedness. Adults should use age-appropriate language for children, answering questions honestly, and consistent reassurance, and encourage consistent reassurance. Encouraging expression through art, play, and conversation help children to process their emotions. Sensitive guidance for adolescents is supporting their needs for independence while being available for their emotional support is key. Validating their feelings and encouraging their healthy outlets for grief, such as sports or creative activities, can aid in their coping. For adults, offering practical support, such as help with daily tasks or alongside emotional support, can be beneficial. Encouraging the use of professional services like counseling and support groups can also aid in their grief journey. And finally, for older adults, providing companionship and opportunities for meaningful engagement, such as storytelling or community involvement, can help them cope with loss. Ensuring that they have access to medical and psychological support is also important. Understanding these aspects of death and dying not only enriches our compassion for others, but also prepares us to navigate our own inevitable encounters with morality. Thank you for engaging in this important discussion today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if you have any thoughts, feel free to share those with me. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day.